Thank you very much, Luciana. It's a great honor for me to chair this session with such important and interesting speakers. The first of which is Professor Andrew Deeks, is the president of University College at Dublin. Professor Deeks got his first degree in civil engineering, and after a brief period in industry, he took his PhD as well. He came back to academia, to his alma mater, the University of Western Australia, to do his PhD. Then he became a professor and head of a school, and until 2009. At that time, he joined the University at the United Kingdom as a Vice Chancellor of Science. And there he did a tremendous job developing global presence strategy and international partnership of the university. Then in 2014, he joined the University College of Dublin, where he performs his research on computational mechanics. And he is, as I said, president of the university. The floor is yours, Professor Deeks.
Okay, thank you very much for that kind introduction. I'll just start the slideshow, hopefully. Here we go. So, colleagues, it's a privilege to talk to you virtually. Obviously, it would be much better to do it the normal way and to see you in person, but hopefully we'll be able to do that in June. So in considering the topic of this session, I thought that an interesting topic to look at was the role that we have as universities in moderating popularism and tribalism, or nationalism as it is called by some people, and perhaps to take us out of the present for a little while and go back to 2016, where we really saw the rise of popularism and tribalism. And I pulled up some of the nonsense that went on back in that time. You can see Trump at his rally in 2016 and his brochure, Globalism versus Nationalism. And the small print on this says, "Forget Republican or Democrat. This country is in an epic battle for its very survival and sovereignty." And then you see on the right, Boris Johnson out there talking about the 350 million that they sent every week to the EU, and talking about funding the NHS instead. And then the sort of nonsense that they were putting out about Britain's new border being with Syria and Iraq, and vote leave, take back control. So this was a time of the rise of popularism, and to the extent that when the Brexit referendum went through and when Trump was elected on the back of the sort of nonsense that he was putting out there, in 2017, you might recall that the Oxford Dictionary chose post-truth as being the word of the year 2017, and they defined it in the way that you see here on the screen. So post-truth relating to or denoting circumstances in which the objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. But when you look back and when you go into the detail in terms of, say, the Brexit referendum, then these charts that I've got here on the left, this was an analysis done by the BBC looking at how the different council wards across the UK had voted, and comparing the proportion of people with a degree or equivalent qualification with the proportion of people within the ward that voted to leave. And what you see there is a very strong correlation that the higher the leave vote in an area, the fewer the graduates, and the lower the leave vote, the more graduates, and a very striking correlation. Perhaps that's received less attention than the one on the right, which shows that older populations had higher leave votes than younger populations, so wards with older populations. But of course, we also know that the number of older people having degree qualifications is less than the number of younger people. And so by the time you correct for that, the biggest influence by far on whether people voted leave or stay was having a degree qualification. Then if you move forward to the kind of sideshow that's been going on in the US recently, this is a poll that was conducted in October about the choice for president amongst voters in Pennsylvania, which many of you will know has been a key state in the outcome of the election this time around. And it shows that white people with college degrees, basically 63% were indicating they'd vote to Biden and 35% Trump. When you went to white people without college degrees, then it flipped around the other way. So the evidence is very clear that a college degree to some extent is a vaccination against populism, though a vaccination with not as amount of success as the recent publication of results we've seen for the COVID-19 pandemic, for the COVID-19 virus. So that's something that we might think about. Now, the post-truth era has been, to some extent, ended by the COVID era, because what COVID has done has focused people back on facts, and in many cases, very unfortunate facts concerning the number of people that are getting sick with the virus, which is a determinable fact, determined by a test as to whether they have the virus or not. And unfortunately, even more unfortunately, the fact that people are dying with the virus in numbers that are being measured very clearly across the world. This is something where post-truth hasn't worked very well. When we've had popularist leaders making sweeping statements about this virus, they have been inevitably shown to be wrong, because there is truth, and to some extent it doesn't make sense to talk about post-truth, because evidence is evidence and truth is truth. And that's why I think we produce graduates who can see through some of these populist ideas, but those ideas now being shown up to be false by the facts. And I think this is coming through. So now we see, of course, very tragically, last night, the US went through 250,000 deaths to the coronavirus. For a long time, Donald Trump was saying that the virus was going to go away. He was accusing China of not publishing proper statistics in terms of how many people had died there. Some of those things he doesn't say anymore. He just ignores it because the evidence has shown other people that what he was saying was nonsense. And fortunately, enough people in the US now have seen that to decide that they need a president who is not part of that popularist movement, but is looking at the scientific evidence. Boris Johnson has unfortunately had a similar awakening to the realities, not just of the COVID-19 pandemic, but the difficulty of getting Brexit through. And I know I've had talks with some of the colleagues here at some of our past meetings in terms of Brexit and how the UK were going to be able to basically put together two incompatible requirements of Brexit. One, that there be no border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, and the second, that Northern Ireland not be seen to be any different from the rest of the UK. And they continue to struggle with that, because it's basically, how do you satisfy something that has competing requirements? And Boris Johnson is still having a difficult time there. So reality comes back. There is no post-truth era. The truth remains, and people who have gone down the popularist route are now finding that out to their detriment. I think that what we can take, and Sari referred to it in her talk earlier, that the COVID-19 pandemic has really given us an opportunity to show what research-based knowledge can do and how that knowledge is developed through the advance of science. And we've seen an extraordinary thing over the course of the year. So in this slide, I've taken us back at the bottom there to January the 11th of this year. It seems like an era ago, but it really was only 11 months ago. And at that time, China released the genetic data on this new coronavirus at the same time that they announced the first death, which was due to the virus. And in the basically 11 months since that time, the world has managed to find out very much about this virus. Not only that, but develop vaccines, develop several that are now in advanced stages of testing and virtually on the basically about to be approved for use in the general population. There are now tens of thousands of people already around the world being protected by viruses. And that's come about through science which is global science, through an effort which is a global effort. So I think that in terms of working against some of those popularist ideas, we now have evidence as to how science develops and people are able to see truth versus just opinion. So when we look at this, we can see, and this Ulrich, I think Ulrich made some comments about this, whether the nationalism will continue to increase. I think that what we've seen through this period is the necessity for us to be globally connected. And this solving the virus problem is just one of the problems that we can solve working together, which can't be solved by nations individually. But there's another side to this, and that's that during this period of the pandemic, our global supply chains have continued running. In addressing the pandemic, much of the personal protective equipment that we've needed is being imported into countries through global supply chains. And the digital technology that allows us to have this meeting today has kept much of the world functioning, but not functioning as individual nations. Although there has been a very significant reduction in people moving from country to country, it hasn't stopped the cooperation, it hasn't stopped multinational corporations functioning, and it hasn't stopped those supply chains. So it's showing us just how much we are globally connected, no matter how much nationalists or populists might want to tell us that that's to our detriment. It's actually very clearly been shown to be to our benefit, and clearly being shown to be an essential part of what we expect out of life today. So then thinking in those terms, we can see that a university education is something of a vaccine to popularist and tribalist ideas. But as I said at the start, it's not a perfect vaccine. So I think in terms of our role going forward, we need to be working out how do we make it a better vaccine? How do we ensure that our graduates understand the importance of globalization, the importance of working together to address global challenges? And I think that that's where within our universities, we can be focused on some of those global challenges, embedding them in our research, embedding them in our teaching, so that we're making our students very aware of the reliance that we have on each other across the globe. We've done that through our Rising to the Future strategy by embracing 4 strategic themes, which will probably be familiar to you, but our intention here is that we embed these themes in everything we do. So in the way that we teach, through our programs, in our research, but also in the way that we function as an organization. This was a strategy that we launched December 2019, so ahead of the pandemic. But when we look back now, the themes really do resonate in a post-COVID-19 world. So obviously creating a sustainable global society, we know that human society can't be sustainable if we only look at it from a national basis. The society will only be sustainable if it's sustainable throughout the globe. There's no point as having a sustainable Ireland if we don't have a sustainable Europe. There's no point having a sustainable Europe if we don't have a sustainable world. We need to be ensuring that our students understand these things. The second theme that we adopted was transforming through digital technology, and very clearly the COVID-19 pandemic has dramatically accelerated that transformation in some aspects, and certainly in terms of the communication, the sorts of things we're doing now. But I think it's also then stalled other parts of that transformation, because when we're working remotely, it's very difficult, I think, to put in place significant amounts of change, significant amounts of organizational change in a way that you can do when you're meeting together, when you're talking to people, when you're having random conversations and getting a feel for how things are. So while we've been able to keep the show on the road, I think during this period of time, transformation in its more broader sense has been more difficult. But I think going forward, we have now a platform to launch that transformation, but it's a global transformation. Now, when we picked this theme, building a healthy world, as the third of our strategic themes, we had no idea how relevant it would become. We were already at that time talking about the need to be looking at health in its broadest sense, and to be making sure that we were not just studying health, but we were having programs that would ensure the health and well-being of all the members of our university community. And the pandemic has just emphasized, I think, the need to ensure health and well-being. The pandemic has unfortunately taken a very heavy toll on people who have underlying health issues. And the fourth theme that we had adopted at that time was empowering humanity, which is very much about embedding the sense that people need to work together across cultures, across differences of opinion, and to do it in a way which is underpinned by an understanding of science, by critical thinking, by an appreciation of evidence. So when we look back at the four themes that we adopted, they seem to work well together to bring our students to a realization of the interconnectedness of society, and hopefully to provide a better vaccination against the ideas of populism and tribalism. So that's what we had put into the Rising to the Future strategy. I hope that's been of some interest to you. And I'm sure that many of the things that you're doing in your universities are also acting as a vaccination against some of these popularist and tribalist ideas. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Deeks. We can move on then to Professor Igor Papič, who is the rector of the University of Ljubljana. Professor Papič, he got his degree, master and PhD from the Faculty of Electrical Engineering, where he is a professor. He works on electricity networks and devices and leads a very successful research group that has even created a spin off out of their results. So and since 2017, as I said, he is the elected rector of the University of Ljubljana. His talk is Universities and Society 5.0. Professor Papič, Rector, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carmela. I hope you can see the presentation. You can hear me?
We do, and we hear you. We
can see excellent, excellent. Just checking. You know, we are using these platforms every day, but every day we could learn something new about some additional buttons that we can use and things like that. Maybe some very short explanation of this title, Universities and Society 5.0. I would say, if I would compare my presentation with what was presented by Andrew, I would say that I will be talking about similar things. So allow me to show what is the contents. Just in the beginning, a few words about the University of Ljubljana. And of course, I don't know how familiar you are with the term Society 5.0. I believe there are also some other words used for this approach in the future. Then I would like to give some overviews about certain new European policies, a new European research area. Recently, it was also published a document towards 2030 vision on the future of universities in Europe. Then I will come back, universities 5.0. It's probably something that it's a bit tricky terminology, but I will provide a kind of comparison, with the real society 5.0. And if we consider a certain university as a kind of a micro society, we can talk also about the university 5.0. And of course, at the end, some conclusions. So the University of Ljubljana is a typical comprehensive research-oriented university, roughly 38,000 students, more than 6,000 employees. For those who do not know exactly where Ljubljana is, you can see we are neighbors of our colleagues from Italy. Luciano, regards to you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and we were celebrating centenary last year. So the university was established in 1919, at that time with 5-member faculties. And at the present, we have the university consists of 23 faculties and 3 art academies. The thing that I would like to point out is actually as the comprehensive university, we are covering all fields of science. I usually say from natural sciences and technology on one side to social sciences and humanities on the other side. It's important to point this out because if we have such broad range of different disciplines, it's much easier to talk about also university. Allow me to try to explain at least what is Society 5.0. Probably we are all aware of different industrial revolutions. At the moment, I would say we are in the middle of so-called Industry 4.0. We know this is called also information society. We used to have industrial society, agrarian society. And if I go now on the other side, the era that is coming, it is denoted as a Society 5.0. But with other words, we could also say it's the next industrial revolution or technological revolution. But it is not called anymore industry, it is called society. As mentioned, from Industry 4.0, we are going towards Society 5.0. Originally, this term was introduced by Japan, some consultancy companies in Japan. They were trying to connect this term with the big societal transformation plan, and also digital society for aging population is quite a topical issue. On the other side, in Europe or within the European Union, we are talking about similar things. I would say that maybe in Europe is more common term Society 2050, which very clearly shows that we are talking about the future development up to 2050. So not only for the next 10 years, but for the next 2050. What is the difference of the Society 5.0 compared to Industry 4.0? Emphasis should be on sociology, and social sciences and humanities should play a crucial role in the future technological development. For instance, if we talk today about what can we do with Google, with Twitter, Andrew was talking about fake news, about misuse of modern technologies. I would ask our instance, is that really technological innovation, Google, or is more non-technological innovation? Because it is based on a relatively old technology. It's based on internet. And internet is here for the next, for the last 10, 20, 30 years. So this is really something that was developed later, and it's not really technological evolution or something like that, but it's a kind of the platform where different group of people, can develop some new business models. Allow me to say a few words about the developments of new products or services. My background is in engineering, as it was said. But I learned very quickly that if we are trying to develop something new, technology is of course important. Let's say if we talk about technological innovation, technology is important, but it's not the crucial point, crucial one. Usually we say that we have at least problems with technology. In many cases, we have to deal also with primarily with business models. Economy is important. If you are not creating some added value, you will not survive with your innovation. Usually we have some legislation, legislative restrictions and so on. And at the end, it's of course the most important point. Who is going to use this product and who is going to use this service? So sociological point of view is probably the most relevant one. And if we only consider economy and business models, then we can talk about misuse or bad use of certain technological solutions. So the idea is that we put in front the needs of the society, not the needs of individuals in terms of optimizing the profit and things like that. Allow me to go very quickly through these two approaches recently published by the European Commission. One is New European Research Area. We said here we can see that we have four strategic objectives. It's not a European research area is not something new. It's a kind of a refreshment of the old policy. And we can see here, what are these four objectives. I'm trying to point out only those things that are interconnected between, the interconnection between universities and society. And of course, if we talk about this interconnection, the first thought is on knowledge transfer. So transfer results to the economy, that should be the crucial point. We have in many cases problems when we have discussion between scientists coming from the field of fundamental research on one side and those that are more on the side of application. We are funded usually as public institutions by our governments, and every government would like to have the results of from science as soon as possible. So they are much more keen on innovation than on fundamental research, because fundamental research is crucial. It's very important, of course, but it can provide results in the longer term. Again, if I go then further, we are still at the new European research area. There are also set 14 actions. Again, I am pointing out the 5th one, 6th, 7th one. If you look at those red notations, industrial technology roadmap, networking framework in support of Europe's research and innovation ecosystem, creating value from knowledge, and so on. So we are always in the central position when we talk about the future development of our societies. Of course, primarily everything is focused on technology, but what I wanted to show is that it's not enough. We have to include also social sciences and humanities, and we have to work on the development of our societies in a sustainable way, because if we continue with this technological development in the same way as we have today, then I believe we will not reach the point where we would like to be in 2050. To continue action 10, 13, 14, again, world-class research infrastructure, technological infrastructure, citizen science campaigns, And at the end, the last one, you know, we should create pact for research and innovation in Europe. Research and innovation. I believe research is more on the side of fundamental research, and innovation, of course, on the application side. Then the other document also recently published is the document with the title Towards 2030 Vision on the future of universities in Europe. Again, allow me to just to point out some important terms again. Research and innovation. Universities have a crucial role to play in the identification of the problems, challenges, and solutions of society today, probably even more in the future. And again, transformation of universities in the fields of research and innovation. Within these documents, we also have so-called 7 transformation modules, and at least 4 of them I identified again as related to the transfer of knowledge to the interaction between the universities and the society. Transformation module 3, a strategic European research and innovation agenda is required. Number 5, increased knowledge transfer again. 6, knowledge-driven universities. 7, research infrastructure again. So we are always putting universities in the central point of the future development. Allow me now to try to make a comparison between Society 5.0 and University 5.0. As I mentioned before, at least our university, I believe many of our universities are similar, comprehensive universities, research-oriented universities. We cover different fields of science. Knowledge transfer is important strategic orientation. We usually say that the first one is probably education, the second one is research, and the third one knowledge transfer. So this multidisciplinary approach enables comprehensive universities to transform to universities 5.0. And that's important not only for that knowledge transfer. I believe we should start thinking also in that way when we talk about education and when we talk about the research. So it should be a long-term process, and I believe, allow me to provide some conclusions, that we will find the right way how to reach our goals in the next 20-30 years. So universities have a crucial role to play in the future development of our societies. We have many strategic documents. Here I mentioned 2 New Era and Vision document. Again, social sciences and humanities should importantly support future technological development. And after Industry 4.0, a new paradigm is coming, Society 5.0, or a more in European way, Society 2050. And primarily comprehensive universities should adopt this approach, and maybe we can introduce this term University 5.0. I believe I'm already a bit long, but maybe just to provide some ideas what we have done in Slovenia. We already established an alliance called Slovenia 5.0. It was organized by the Slovenian Chamber of Commerce and Industry together with the Rectors Conference. Then we put these ideas also in the new research strategy for the period 21-30. The same was in our new national program of higher education for the period again from 21 to 30. And the most important, that's also one of the main subjects of our European Alliance, Utopia. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Papič. Thank you, Igor. And I think that that was a very interesting insight into this nice concept of Society 5.0. And so I will give the floor without any more delay to Professor Mathieson, who is at the moment the Principal and Vice Chancellor of Edinburgh University. Professor Mathieson is a doctor, medical doctor, from the University of London, where he graduated first class honors. Then he got his PhD at the University of Cambridge. Then he became director of studies, and then he moved on to University of Bristol. He was a professor there, head of the Department of Clinical Science. Then he was a dean of the Faculty of Medicine and Dentistry there in Bristol. And then he had a central role in creating the Bristol Health Partners. And he became founder director, until 2014, when he became president of Hong Kong University. And then he became 4 years later, so 2018, principal and vice chancellor of Edinburgh University. The title of his talk will be Looking for Silver Linings, so an optimistic insight, I guess. Professor Mathieson.
Thank you very much, Carmela, for that introduction. It's kind of strange hearing your life history read out like that, but you have it accurate, so well done. Thank you. I have moved around quite a bit. Every time I hear someone give that sort of description, I think to myself, can't I keep a proper job for very long? I keep moving so much. But anyway, I am currently in Edinburgh, as you see. The picture behind me is taken on a day that's a little bit sunnier than today, but the sun always shines in Edinburgh, and I'm trying to be optimistic. When Laura first invited me to the meeting and asked me to give a presentation, I immediately suggested this title, Every Cloud Has a Silver Lining, and I'll try and illustrate why I think we could be looking at the pandemic in that way, and hopefully raise a few issues for discussion. So I'm going to try and share my screen. I hope this works. Usually when I do this, I can't see what you can see, but if someone could tell me whether or not you can see my screen now.
We can see it. Thank you. We can see it.
Good.
Yeah.
COVID-19 clearly is the cloud that I'm talking about. I spoke on a panel at another European conference earlier in the week, and someone asked me whether could I draw the same picture for Brexit, and could I see any silver linings for Brexit? I'm happy to discuss that when we come to the discussion, but I'm not addressing that in these few slides. And I just would quickly say that I find it much harder to find silver linings of Brexit than I do for COVID-19. But we have this phrase in English that every cloud has a silver lining. And the question really is, what can we say could be the positives from the experience that all of us have had during 2020? I think there are 5. I will list them on this slide, and then I'll just have one slide on each of them just to cover a bit of detail. So the first one is that the world is learning to cope with and hopefully defeat a new infectious agent. And our universities and universities all over the world have made very major contributions to the response to understanding the virus and its effects and to combating it. And I think collectively we should be very proud of that. Secondly, universities have adapted remarkably quickly and effectively. We all know that universities are very conservative organizations where change is sometimes difficult and sometimes slow. But this year, we've seen remarkable change, remarkable speed and remarkable pace, and I would say in general, remarkable effectiveness. And again, I think that's a source of pride for all of us. This is a big favorite topic of mine, internationalization, which I, both by my own experience and also by what I believe to be in the best interests of my university and its students and staff, is the role of internationalization. And what we've had this year is internationalization without travel, because travel has been so heavily restricted. And I'll say a couple of examples of why I think that's worked well. Fourth, change has been accelerated, and some of this change was probably change that we should have been doing anyway, but we've been forced to do it more quickly and at greater scale by the pandemic. And I confidently believe that some of this change will be irreversible, and the task for us all now is to identify which parts of it we want to be irreversible and how can we learn from these recent months. And fifth and finally, the pandemic has exposed inequalities that we already knew existed, but they're now much more prominent and they're much more urgent. And I firmly believe in the transformative power of education as being a major tool of social mobility and a major way of combating inequalities. And so I think for all of us, we're needed more than ever before in order to combat these inequalities. So that's a quick summary of the 5 items, and I'll just do a bit more detail of them in turn. So on the first one, coping with a new infectious agent, we've seen all over the world academics appearing as government advisors, standing alongside political leaders and being deferred to for advice. Now, clearly, some of that advice has been controversial, and in some countries, the advice has been not so welcome. But we have seen a very prominent role for scientific advisors, most of whom are either currently in universities or have in the past worked in universities in these very influential roles to governments, to the World Health Organization, to the media, and in all sorts of other public engagement settings. So our contribution to the pandemic includes one of information and policy advice. Of course, we're also major powerhouses of research, and there's research on the virus itself, on the human response to it, and indeed the animal response to it, but also on the social science, on the economic impacts, on the political issues around it, and on aspects of human behavior according to the pandemic and our responses to it. All of these are very fertile grounds for research. And for all of us that have shifted our universities to online, predominantly online delivery of our education, have had to think about how can our research be delivered? Can it be done remotely? Can it be done online? Some of it obviously requires laboratory facilities and can't be done anywhere other than in the laboratory. And I think all of us have made efforts to keep our research active as much as possible in very difficult circumstances. And it's because we're contributing in all these different ways to the understanding of the pandemic and the way in which the world can combat it. This is also extending into direct interventions, so laboratory and clinical research on drugs, including new drugs and including old drugs or so-called repurposed drugs, drugs which are already approved. And the single drug which you've seen that's been shown to be most effective so far in this disease is a drug called dexamethasone, which is very old and very cheap and very straightforward. And so that intervention, studying that old drug in this new disease, has been completed remarkably quickly with a major clinical trial, which I'm proud to say the University of Edinburgh was part of, and in the design and the leading of that trial, showing that dexamethasone reduces mortality in this disease. And that's now being rolled out in every patient, I think, in the world that's getting access to intensive treatment for severe manifestations of the disease will now be receiving dexamethasone, and that's a significant advance. Of course, there's a lot of work to be done on the diagnostic tests, both in terms of sensitivity and specificity, on the development of new treatments, and of course on the development of new vaccines. And so in every way, universities are contributing, in many cases working together with industrial partners or biotech partners to try and improve the weapons that we have to deploy against this virus. And so I think a question, and we might come back to this in discussion, is, has the public standing of universities been enhanced? I hope the answer is yes. Of course, when experts disagree with one another, and a lot of this has been played out in the media in the UK, I guess you will have seen it in all of your countries as well, there is a risk that people, the public, think, well, these experts can't agree with each other, and actually they're just arguing, and who's right and who's wrong, and which one should the government believe? So there is a risk that what we regard as normal in a university, which is debate and interaction and differences of opinion, doesn't always play out as well in the media or in the public eye. But I think in general, I hope that the public standing of universities has been enhanced, because I think we've made very major contributions. Secondly, this amazing adaptation process that we've gone through. So online or digital learning was already something that we were all interested in, and in many cases doing a lot of already. Certainly in the University of Edinburgh, this was something that was a very prominent part of our offering, but it was mostly on distance learning. It was mostly to students that would never travel to Edinburgh, and we have big online programs of students that complete an Edinburgh degree without ever coming to Edinburgh, except they may come here for their graduation ceremony. But what we've done is we've transferred this expertise onto our so-called on-campus students, so our home students, or the students that would normally be here. And what this required us to do was to scale up and speed up our processes and change the scope of them. So this was now required for all of our students and all of our staff. Some of the human aspects required considerable amounts of training, both of students and staff. There's also practical issues around equipment and infrastructure and connectivity with Wi-Fi or broadband, and all sorts of practical difficulties in terms of people's time, especially if they're working from home and they have caring responsibilities, or if they indeed have health worries themselves. So it was extraordinarily complicated, and we describe our delivery as a hybrid model. I'm sure you're all using similar terminology, either hybrid or blended, where there's some online and some face-to-face. And I think this has been a remarkable success for the university sector, and I'm quite sure that some of the lessons learned will be useful for generations to come. All of our examinations in Edinburgh have been conducted online in the end of last year, at the end of the last academic year, using the phenomenon of so-called open book examinations, where you give students a period of time to complete an exam. And in theory, they can get information from wherever they like. So they can have the exam open on one page and the internet open to look up results on the other. And the recipe for cheating or for getting inadequate supervision is obviously real, but there are ways of managing this, and open book examinations is the approach that we took. We've also asked ourselves whether we examine too much. Should we reduce the intensity of our exams? And certainly for Edinburgh, what we did with the last academic year is we abolished year 1 and 2 exams, because we felt these were exams that were mostly used for progression decisions. Should a student progress from one year to the next? And we have many other ways of assessing whether students are suitable to progress. And we decided that we didn't need the exams to add to that information. We would just allow them to progress unless other reasons suggested that they shouldn't. And we concentrated our exams on the years 3 and 4 and 5 for those that are doing longer courses, because those are the qualifying exams. And so maybe we examined too much. All of our staff, or the majority of our staff, have been working from home. I'm sure this is true for many of you as well. We've surveyed our staff, and we found that 90% of our staff, 90%, indicated that they would like to continue in the long term having some part of working from home. Maybe not full-time, but they would be interested in some arrangement of working from home. And only 10% really felt that that would be impossible. So this has been a successful move, and staff seem to like it. Many of our researchers remained very productive during the period of lockdown. Some of them were writing papers and research grant proposals. Some of them were continuing their research, and as I've said, some of that research is directly focused on combating the pandemic. But many researchers, despite very difficult circumstances, have demonstrated commitment and innovation and remained very productive. And of course, we've all seen a marked reduction in travel. So conferences like this one, where we're all sitting in a home location and contributing to an international meeting, has really become the normal way of working. And certainly I've sat in the same room in my house in Edinburgh and given talks all over the world in the last few months, and it's been very efficient. It means that I haven't traveled, which is disappointing in some ways, because I enjoy travel and I enjoy meeting people and going to new places. But there are some real bonuses. It's cheaper, it's more efficient, and of course it has beneficial effects on the climate impact. So I think our efficiency, both in terms of student and staff working, has improved. And also importantly, I think we're offering more choice. We can offer our staff choice. Do you want to work from home, or do you want to come into the office? We can offer students choice. Do you want to have your education delivered online or in person or in some sort of mixture? And the balance, the preferences we find are not always predictable. Some students prefer a particular type of delivery, and we can offer them the choice in the future. Thirdly, internationalization without travel. So, of course, collaboration is vitally important to all of us. We know that we're stronger in partnership. We know that we have many shared interests with colleagues in universities all around the world. And the role played by networks such as UNICA are really important in promoting these collaborations. The question for us is, can we provide language immersion to our students working in another language in another country? And can we provide the social experiences that they would normally get from travel? And it's not just students, it's staff as well, including rectors. Can we provide those things electronically? I think we can. I think this kind of technology that we're using today now works extremely well. I strongly believe that students have the most benefit when they're outside their comfort zone. This was certainly true for me in my own education and in my own research experience. Getting students and people generally to be somewhere different and be with different people and be in different circumstances is a very important developmental and learning experience. And I do believe that some of these things can still be provided in an era when travel, direct travel, is going to be restricted. We know that so-called Generation Z or Z is comfortable with these online interactions. We know that many of them have friendships with people that they've never physically met. And I think sometimes my generation, the older generation, is a bit suspicious of this, but I was reflecting on this when I wrote this slide, and I was thinking during the last few months, I've actually made a very close friendship with a university president in Canada who I've never met. But he and I have been talking about things. We happen to be on a board together. We've got to know each other, and we've never physically met. So I do think it is possible, even for old people like me, to make new friendships without meeting people physically. Of course, there is the impact I've already said on climate impact, carbon footprint, savings in cost, and time efficiencies. So the question here is, has the world effectively got smaller because we don't need physical travel as much as we previously thought we did? And I think the answer to that question is yes. Okay, fourth one is that change has been accelerated, and we can make some of these changes irreversible if we wish. So I've already said that universities are typically not easy to change, especially on large scale. And we have a process of lengthy consultation which sometimes can slow down change. We couldn't respond to the pandemic like that. We had to do things quickly. We had to do things in a top-down sort of way. And some of these things are things that we probably should have been doing anyway, but they were accelerated by the external events. And I think the art for this will be to harness these changes and keep the improvements and not return to at least all of the old ways. There will be a powerful desire to return to some of the old ways, but not all of them. And for us in Edinburgh, we've used this phrase adaptation. We've never talked about recovery, because recovery implies that it's complete and it's quick and you go back to where you were before. And we've always felt that probably recovery is the wrong word. It's much more about adaptation to a new set of circumstances. And then finally, I talked about inequalities. We know that the pandemic has had preferential impacts both medically and economically and socially on disadvantaged people. We know that education is a powerful driver of social mobility. One aspect of inequality that we've spent a lot of time thinking about, and I know a lot of you will have done as well, is what we call digital poverty. So this is where people have problems either related to physical devices. Maybe a household only has one tablet or two tablets, and when the parents and the children all want to be using the devices to get education or to speak to their friends, then this becomes a problem. There's also problems of connectivity, whether it's Wi-Fi signal or broadband access or satellite access. And of course, the third one, which people don't always talk about, is time. You have to make time for these activities, and if people have got caring responsibilities, or if they're unwell or they're worried about their own health or the health of loved ones, time itself can be the constraint. And so I do believe that education and also research, as I've also indicated, can drive this adaptation process. And I think there are wonderful opportunities for universities here to lead change and to innovate and to do things differently and show society the way forward. So I've finished there. These are my take-home messages or discussion points. Firstly, universities, we know, are highly resilient organizations. Many of the universities in Europe are hundreds of years old, and they've survived wars and pandemics and civil unrest and famines. And I think as a group of organizations, we should be confident both about our current contributions and the ways we can continue to contribute in the future. Secondly, the universities that flourish in this situation will be the ones that adapt most effectively. And I think that's a challenge to all of us. Some of our organizations are slow to adapt, and we have to adapt quickly and effectively. And I think there may be some real surprises about the universities that emerge from this pandemic in the strongest shape. It'll be the ones that adapt most effectively. I think collaboration is more important than ever. I've always believed in international collaboration, particularly between universities, but also between universities and schools or governments or industries. And UNICA has an important role to play in fostering this collaboration. And I believe if we're smart about harnessing the changes that have worked well, we'll be able to look back on this period as having had a net benefit. Although it's been awful, there's been terrible tragedies in terms of health and the economy and people's lives, there can be benefits if we're smart about identifying them and working with them. And so my final conclusion is, I've already said this, but the transformative power of education is needed now more than ever before, and I think that's the challenge to all of us. So Carmela, that was my presentation. I'll try now to unshare my screen, and then hopefully we can open up for discussion.
Thank you so much, Professor Mathieson, Peter. Thank you to all of you. I have reunited few sentences and transformed, adding some ideas of the speakers. I think we agree all that science and knowledge have shown their power during this pandemic time. We can see that the importance of globalization, which I think is the hallmark of Society 5.0, is there, and internationalization can be achieved without travel, but also globalization. So I think that globalization and internationalization go hand by hand. I think definitely the transformative and adaptative power of education. So the more educated you are, the best you can adapt. It's not always true, but it is also important. But in this very inspiring and optimistic view, which I share with you and I agree 100%, there is this little dark spot about inequalities and how we universities can help about helping these inequalities. So I think that our public engagement and our thoughts about how to empower citizens, all citizens, could be central as well. So, and I would like also to introduce this idea on how we can listen to society as well, so to citizens, to improve and to transform our vision and our mission. So I don't know whether there are hands that are raised. I don't see. Laura, if you can help me.
Yes,
oh,
but
okay.
there are no raised hands. So for the moment, so I will let you know if someone.
Sibel would like to talk.
Sibel, please.
Thank you for all the speakers. And I would like to ask a question to Peter, because again, the most positive results and most positive maybe outcomes of this terrible COVID year. So I wonder, because you concluded all the important impacts of this tragedy on our education system or education sector, maybe we should say. So do you think you are not only looking at the full part of the glass, or is it equal, the negative and positive impacts? Because when I listen to you, I feel so happy now, because we had so many so many good things happening in our lives, but I don't know if it is this positive or this perfect.
Sibel, Carmela, would you like me to answer that? I mean,
yes,
thank you, Sibel. I mean, of course, my first picture was a very dark cloud, and I was only talking about the silver lining of it. I didn't talk about the dark cloud because that's not my nature. But of course, there have been some very negative features. And right now, I would say that most of my students and staff here, and I guess it'll be true in all of your universities as well, would say that they're not very satisfied or happy or optimistic right now about the situation. It's really still very badly disrupted. But I do think that I hope that in 10 years' time, we'll be able to look back and say, well, there were some positives. Right now, it's quite difficult to find them. And I think the dark part of the cloud is more prominent in most people's view at the moment, but I deliberately tried to look at the areas for optimism, because I genuinely believe that there are some.
Thank you. I do believe it.
Yes, so maybe Andrew can also build up on that. What do you think about the pessimistic view that some scholars and students have at the moment? Can we look at a more positive future?
Yeah, I don't know this is a pessimistic view. It's just that we're coping with an extremely difficult situation, a situation that the world hasn't seen, certainly in the lifetime of anyone here. And for faculty members, for staff of the university, they've had to change things very, very quickly. They've had to respond to circumstances which change by the day, certainly by the week, but often by the day. And there's a degree of fatigue in that. For students, particularly first-year students who had expected to come to university and have the time of their life and meet new people and, really get to live their life, they're not experiencing that. And it's a great disappointment for them. For some of them, certainly for our students, although we're doing our best to engage them, for students that have never been into the university, have never seen their lecturers face to face, it remains difficult. So I think it's not that it's a pessimistic view, it's that this is an extremely difficult situation that we're all in, and that everyone's doing their best to cope with it, given the tools that they have. However, once we do get the protection of the vaccines and we're able to go back to a more normal life, I think, as Peter says, there'll be plenty of lessons that we'd take with us, but there will also be a very great amount of joy at being able to do the simple things, to be able to get together with friends, to be able to have that chat after a tutorial with your students, and for us, hopefully to be able to get together in Dublin in June and to reflect on some of this over a cup of tea, or maybe something a little stronger. So I don't think it's about pessimism. It's that this is an extremely difficult situation. We've had to cope with it now for a long period of time. There's an element of fatigue, but as Peter's pointed out, there's a bright side that we can take forward the positive learnings from this to the future.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. I think Ivan Prosakov wanted to talk, has raised his hand.
Yes, thank you, Carmela. I would like to say that I'm optimistic and confident, generally speaking. I liked the idea of Peter and I share it, that changes are now irreversible. We, even after a pandemic situation, I believe that we'll live in new conditions and we'll use new tools in education and research, in our exchanges. And in fact, as Peter also said, internationalization without moving, it will be possible and it will be developed. But at the same time, I see that even university, generally speaking, once again, are ready to change quickly, probably not so quickly that we need. By chance, next week, we'll have here in Russia, online obviously, a big roundtable on Russia-European Union relations in education, just in COVID and post-COVID era. We'll discuss how to work together in new circumstances and new conditions, and we'll talk about mobility. What we see in our university, that we decided to offer immediately, knowing the changes in spring, we decided to offer to our partners the possibility of online mobility, of virtual mobility. And we hoped that to find the same response. Unfortunately, it's quite asymmetric. Normally, we receive per semester approximately 350, 400 international students for short-term programs, mainly from European countries. Now, also, it's quite evident, we have almost 80, only 80 European students, and only 11 are here in Russia in our university. For the rest of them, we offered online mobility programs. It means 60 students, European students, follow our programs online. But at the same time, we could send, if I may, only 2 our students to European universities. It means that there is no adequate response now. And it seems to me that many of our partners are hoping, are waiting for changes, maybe in a few months, that the situation will be completely changed, will go back to the normal situation and will resume the physical mobility. Probably not. So once again, I'm optimistic, I'm confident, but at the same time, I strongly believe that we have to use this moment to adapt our behavior, our programs, and to change also our approaches to traditional ways of working, of thinking. Thank you. I thank you once again for this exciting meeting and enriching presentations, and to all of you and to UNICA Secretariat. Thank you, Luciano.
Thank you for your intervention, Ivan. I do entirely agree that we have to look at things a bit differently. We can also think about physical mobility, face-to-face mobility. That was the hallmark of Erasmus program at the end of the century, the 20th century, and even the beginning of the 2000s. The mobility was limited for many, many people. They hadn't traveled much in Europe. So for some people and some families, it was just the first time they went out in Europe. I mean, things have changed, and now young people love to really go to many places. So maybe the blended mobility, which actually I will be talking in HSE shortly, is a solution and is a good compromise for young students. I think there was somebody else, Damiano Pinacchio, maybe. Damiano, you wanted to talk?
Yes,
hello,
thank you so much. Hello. First of all, let me thank you, Carmela, for the managing this session, and to the speaker that gives many inputs and give a very nice message that I think university have to be leader and be positive, deliver positive messages for the community at all, not only for the students. And also, I would like to just get some, just few minutes to share a very nice and good example that coming from the South America. We can say at micro level, because in this moment of crisis, there was different kind of measures that at macro level, like the government and extra government decision making and actions, but also at micro level, that is in some cases very important. This practical example that I would like to share with you is related to the very micro level, in order to avoid the exclusion of students of the education in this moment. As you mentioned, Carmela, there was, and arise for the speaker as well, there was some problems related to the possibility for students to have no access to a stable internet connection, and also the possibility that they didn't have computers in order to attend classes. So what happens basically in Brazil? You know that Brazil was one of the countries the most affected in South America for the COVID infection at the University of Campinas. The rector of the University of Campinas had a very good idea and a nice action, because there in that area of Brazil, there was a very lack of internet connection, and students have no, or many of them, no possibility to have a computer. Mm. So he had a good idea to make an agreement, a specific agreement with the phone companies, the phone provider companies, in order to create and change the format of the classes and be good to be provided for the phone, because all people, all the students have a mobile phone. So they work together in order to provide these classes on the mobile phone, and in order to have a stable and connection.
Yes,
just this.
In Brazil, that has been in many other countries that I know as well, that there have been a big effort also from governments, not only universities, but helping university students to get on, and even school students. We have to close now the session, unfortunately. Damiano, thank you so much for this interesting observation that we need to address these inequalities. Well, thank you so much to the rectors, the principals, the vice chancellors that have done this fantastic session, this very insightful observations and food for thoughts and for optimism, and also for spotting the important things that we have to address from now on in this complex society of the 20th century. Thank you so much. Luciano, maybe you want to say the final words. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Carmela, for sharing so well this excellent session. Thank you very much to Professor Deeks, Professor Papič, and Professor Mathieson for very interesting presentations. Before closing, I would like, if you agree, have again the video by the commissioner, because I think it is an important message. And for technical problems in the beginning, it did not work. I asked the secretariat to try again it's only 5 minutes audio. The thing is interesting, by the Commissioner Maria Gabriel, Commissioner for Innovation, Research, Culture, Education and Youth.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to have the opportunity to congratulate you on the occasion of the 30th University of UNICA. Thanks to networks of universities like yours, the higher education sector in Europe has shown such resilience, excellence, and solidarity during the coronavirus crisis. It is very important to put higher education at the heart of our plans to address the effects of the crisis and the challenges of green and digital transitions. We did this in the Commission's knowledge strategy that I presented at the end of September. This strategy has 3 pillars: a European education area by 2025, a revitalized European research area, and a digital education action plan. Together, the European research area and the European education area will help us achieve a rich innovation ecosystem that works for all. Research universities are the lifeblood of this ecosystem. The communication on the European education area emphasizes the co-creative aspect of our work. But you know this very well. We have been working together on this since the beginning. Just last January, I met with President Sasso to discuss the knowledge strategy. We want higher education to adapt to the needs of the 21st century, but we also want the sector itself to be the agent of its own transformation. Fostering cooperation between higher education institutions is a prerequisite for achieving this vision of transformation. We'll continue to take inspiration from the European Universities Initiative. We now have more than 280 higher education institutions in 41 alliances located all over Europe. I'm pleased to see that so many UNICA members are participating. These alliances are a concrete example of an initiative where the closely intertwined objectives of the European education area and the European research area come together. This is how we achieve long-term joint strategies on education, research and innovation. The critical mass of European universities alliances will allow for pooling of resources and wider use of new technologies, helping us to transform the way learners experience higher education. But you know this better than most. So many of you are already involved in creating knowledge ecosystems with a challenge-based approach to learning, teaching and research. Just look at today's program and how focused you are on specific issues, from COVID-19 to moderating populism. This work is essential, not only because it benefits your institutions, but the 5,000 institutions spread across our continent can learn from you. I would like to highlight two areas in which the experience of European universities will be exceptionally useful: micro-credentials and gender equality. We need universities to help everyone, young or old, to be ready to enter or re-enter the job market. This is especially important given the economic challenges we are facing with the COVID crisis. This is why we must adopt an approach that, in addition to full degrees, allows those who cannot take them to skill and reskill and upskill. This is essential because we cannot afford to leave people by the wayside. And leaving people aside leads me to the second point. We need gender equality everywhere, including in higher education, and especially in all those fields where women are underrepresented, like STEM. We cannot afford to lose their talent and their perspective. This is one of my key priorities in all pillars of the knowledge strategy. I mention these issues because if we are to transform higher education together, we should focus on our shared priorities. These may be challenging times, but by working together, we can ensure that higher education, along with our surrounding community, emerges stronger and more connected than ever before. And organizations like UNICA go a long way to achieving this objective. I wish you a great General Assembly and look forward to seeing you soon.
Perfect. So thank you for your patience, but I think it was important to listen to this message. I think is important by the Commissioner Maria Gabriel. So I think now it's really late, so we have to close. I want to thank very much all the speakers, all the chairs, all the participants, this afternoon, but also this morning. I think it was a long day, but very interesting for me. I learned a lot, and it was very nice to see you online for several hours. Of course, it's not the same as in person, but I think the quality also can be good in this event. I'm looking forward to seeing you on other UNICA events online. As I presented this morning, there are many webinars, upcoming, for different people at our universities, the rectors, vice rectors, but also heads of the different offices of our university. So please help us to disseminate the information. The UNICA calendar is always online, updated, so all the information is there. The website of UNICA is quite rich, and we're going to updating the version of the website. So very soon there will be a new software, more mobile friendly, and this I think will also help UNICA members to be informed on all the activities. And looking forward to the different events next year, and especially the webinars organized by Ljubljana in February, the General Assembly in June in Dublin, hopefully in person. We really cross our fingers to have a good vaccine soon, which will allow us to meet in person in Dublin, and then afterwards, and then maybe some other people who will not be able to travel will join us online. I think the plan is to keep UNICA events in a hybrid way, because I think this is one of the lessons we learned from this crisis, that it is also possible to meet online, to make friends, like Professor Mathieson said. This is also my experience. We could have also close relationships with people online. Of course, it is not the same. We cannot have a very nice glass of wine or a nice beer together, which also helps, sometimes to make friends. But indeed, the quality can be very good. So thank you very much again. Thank you very much to the Secretariat. They did an excellent work. It was not easy, as it was said in the chat. It was a challenge. This is our first General Assembly online. We experimented different new things, and I think everything went well. So thank you very much to the people working in the office, Laura Brossico, Niki Tsonka, Alexandra Duarte, and Laura Colò. Thanks again, and see you soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Luciano. Bye now.
Bye,
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye
Bye.
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 Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Grazie Laura, bella, bravissima.
Two Lauras, one Vicky, and one Alexandra. So
yes,
the composition.
But because I talked to Laura.
Yeah,
Laura, I see you. I see you.
These are the four pillars of UNICA.
Yes.
I was muted. I was talking and muted.
Yes. Alexandra, Laura.
This time it was more me, but the other colleagues are working.
Making miracles. Even the audio of Maria Gabriel functioned very well. So even the last challenge, the president is always pushing until the limit. The team is responding very well because really it would have been a pity to I think this message.
Well,
thank you, Carmela. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I can say that the president also pushes to the limit everybody, even the steering committee, the colleagues.
It's really, but no, thank you, Carmela. It was really always available. You shared so well at this last session. Indeed, it was a good event, I think, both in the morning and in the afternoon. High-level speeches. Even this last one by the principal of Edinburgh, I think was great.
No, it was very good. And also Andrew Deeks, I liked this.
Yes.
Of course, because to handle this kind of universities, of course, you have really a lot of experience.
It was a luxury, really.
And we have to remind that Tanya Borser is someone who should be invited in other meetings because she's really good. I mean,
Yeah.
lot of content and also her personality. I think we could invite her as a speaker for other events. I think she's really good.
Her.